Chapter 1. Isla Thorne had never felt beautiful in her life, and the charity gala at the Riverside Grand wasn't changing that. She tugged at her oversized blazer, navy, professional, safe, and wondered for the 100th time why she'd agreed to come. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and designer gowns, filled with wolves who looked like they'd stepped out of magazines. Polished. Perfect. Everything she wasn't. Her Omega friends had tried, they'd really tried, but no amount of borrowed heels or hastily applied mascara could transform a bookish civil rights lawyer into whatever ideal Omega was supposed to look like. Isla had given up halfway through and scraped her hair into its usual messy bun, her glasses sliding down her nose as she'd rushed out the door. Now she stood near the Omega accessibility ramp, or rather, where the ramp should have been, arguing with a harried event coordinator. "I don't care if it ruins your aesthetic," Isla said, her voice sharp with the kind of authority she'd learned to wield in courtrooms. "The Accessibility Act requires ramps at all public events. This is a charity gala for moon's sake. You're literally raising money for disabled wolves while excluding them from attending." The coordinator flushed, stammering something about permits and last-minute changes. Isla's wolf stirred beneath her skin, restless and irritated. Her Omega had never been the docile type, much to her mother's despair. "I want the ramp installed by next week's event, or I'm filing a formal complaint," Isla continued, pulling out her phone to make notes. "I'm sure the press would be very interested in—" Then it happened. A scent hit her like a physical force. Pine and winter storms, mountain air and something wild, something that made her wolf surge forward with a desperation that stole her breath. Her phone clattered to the marble floor. No, 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 no. Isla's head snapped up, her eyes scanning the crowded ballroom with sudden, terrible urgency. Her Omega was howling inside her chest, clawing to get closer to that scent, to find him, there. Across the room, standing near the bar in a perfectly tailored black suit, was the most beautiful alpha she'd ever seen. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair styled just carelessly enough to seem effortless. She recognized him instantly, Callum Ashford, the fitness influencer with 40 million followers. The one whose perfect abs and motivational quotes filled her Instagram feed whether she wanted them to or not. Their eyes locked. The mate bond snapped into place with the force of a lightning strike. Isla felt it in every cell of her body, the sudden, overwhelming rightness of his existence. Her wolf sang with recognition, with relief, with a joy so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "Mine," her Omega whispered. "Ours, finally." For one perfect, suspended moment, Callum's expression was raw with something, shock, maybe, or pain. His eyes flashed gold, his wolf rising too. "Meet hers." His hand gripped the bar so hard she heard the wood creak from across the room. Then his face went carefully, devastatingly blank. He turned away. Isla stood there, trembling, her heart hammering against her ribs. The coordinator was still talking, but his voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Her Omega was whining, confused and hurt by the alpha's rejection of their gaze. "It's fine," Isla told herself, even as her hands shook. "It's fine. He probably didn't feel it. Maybe I imagined." But she hadn't imagined the way his eyes had flashed gold. Hadn't imagined the way his entire body had gone rigid with recognition. Hadn't imagined the scent of pine and storms that even now wrapped around her like a promise her Omega desperately wanted to believe. She bent to retrieve her phone, her movements mechanical. The coordinator was apologizing now, agreeing to install the ramp. Isla nodded, accepted his card, and somehow managed to excuse herself without her voice breaking. She made it to the bathroom before the tears came. Stupid, she thought viciously, staring at her reflection in the ornate mirror. Stupid to hope. Stupid to think that someone like Callum Ashford would want someone like her. She was too bookish, too plain, too argumentative. Two everything wrong and nothing right. Her omega curled up inside her chest, wounded and confused. Isla splashed cold water on her face, careful not to smudge what little makeup she wore. She would go home, order takeout, pretend this night had never happened. Pretend she hadn't just met her fated mate and watched him turn away. It was fine. It had to be fine. Because the alternative, that the universe had finally given her someone meant just for her, only to have him reject her on sight, was too devastating to bear. Chapter 2. 3 days later, Isla received a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Café Moreau, 2 p.m. tomorrow. Come alone. Callum Ashford." Her heart stuttered in her chest. Her omega perked up with pathetic hope. "He wants to see us," her wolf whispered. "He changed his mind. He wants us after all." Isla told her omega to shut up, but she couldn't stop the nervous flutter in her stomach as she got ready the next day. She tried on 3 different outfits before settling on her usual uniform: oversized cream cardigan, loose jeans, comfortable flats. Her hair was its usual messy bun. Her glasses were smudged. She looked exactly like herself, which was apparently not good enough for an alpha like Callum Ashford. But maybe, she thought hopefully, maybe that didn't matter. Maybe the bond was stronger than appearances. Maybe. She walked into Café Moreau at exactly 2 p.m. Callum was already there, sitting at a corner table in the otherwise empty cafe. He must have rented out the entire space for privacy. His expression was cold, professional. Nothing like the shock she'd seen at the gala. Or had that been pain? She couldn't tell. Beside him sat a severe-looking beta. A woman in a designer suit, her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She had a leather folder in front of her and the predatory look of someone who ate Omega rights lawyers for breakfast. Isla's stomach dropped. This wasn't a reconciliation. This was a formal rejection. She sat down across from them, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to stop them from shaking. Her omega was whining, confused and frightened. Her wolf didn't understand why their mate looked at them with such cold disinterest. "Thank you for coming," Callum said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "This is Vanessa Chen, my manager. We wanted to handle this quickly and professionally." "Handle what?" Isla asked, even though she already knew. Even though she could feel the rejection coming like a storm on the horizon. Callum didn't even have the decency to look uncomfortable. "The bond. It was clearly a mistake. I'm formally rejecting it." The words hit her like a physical blow. Her omega howled in pain. Her wolf thrashed inside her chest, desperate to understand why their mate was doing this. "A mistake," Isla repeated numbly. "Yes." Callum's ice-blue eyes were merciless. "You're not what my brand needs. My followers expect a certain aesthetic, polished, put together, someone who photographs well. You look like a graduate student who forgot to go home." This was clearly a cosmic misfire. Each word was a knife between her ribs. Isla felt her face flush with shame and anger. Her hands clenched so tightly her nails bit into her palms. "Your brand," she said slowly. "You're rejecting our mate bond because I don't fit your Instagram aesthetic." "Precisely." Callum leaned back in his chair, every inch the successful influencer. "I need someone glamorous, someone who understands media presence, someone who looks the part of an alpha's mate. You're too..." He waved a hand vaguely at her. "Bookish, unfeminine. Those oversized clothes, that messy hair, the complete lack of style. It's not going to work." Isla's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Every insecurity she'd ever had about herself came rushing back with vicious clarity. Too loud, too argumentative, too smart, too plain. Two everything wrong and nothing right. Not omega enough. Not pretty enough. Not enough. Vanessa slid the leather folder across the table. This is the severance year contract. PAC law requires 12 months of cohabitation to allow the bond to deteriorate naturally. You'll live together in a neutral residence, attend therapy twice weekly, and complete all required exercises. There's also an NDA. You won't speak to the press about Mr. Ashford or this arrangement. Of course, Isla said bitterly. Can't have it getting out that the perfect alpha bachelor rejected his fated mate because she wasn't pretty enough for his followers. Callum's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Something flickered in his eyes. Was that guilt? But it was gone so quickly, Isla thought she'd imagined it. I'm trying to be professional about this, he said. The least you can do is sign the paperwork without drama. Drama. He thought her devastation was drama. Isla wanted to scream, wanted to cry, wanted to shift and let her omega tear apart this cafe and everything in it. But she was a lawyer. She knew how to control herself even when her heart was shattering into pieces. She pulled the folder toward her and flipped through the contract with shaking hands. Standard severance year terms. The apartment would be provided by the court. Separate bedrooms, shared common spaces, twice weekly therapy, monthly PAC integration events, monitoring bracelets to track their biological responses, 12 months of living with the man who just told her she wasn't good enough, 12 months of letting the mate bond slowly die, 12 months of torture. Isla looked up at Callum. His expression was still carefully blank, but she caught another flicker of something in his eyes. Pain? Regret? She couldn't tell. Whatever it was, he clearly didn't care enough about her to change his mind. You're absolutely certain, she said quietly. This is what you want? To reject the bond? Yes, Callum said. No hesitation, no warmth. I'm certain. Liar, her omega whispered. But Isla pushed the thought away. Wishful thinking wouldn't change reality. She pulled a pen from her bag, one of the cheap ballpoint pens she always carried, covered in tooth marks from anxious chewing. She signed the contract with sharp, angry strokes. There, she said, shoving the folder back across the table. Signed. Professional enough for you? She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Callum and Vanessa remained seated, watching her with identical expressions of cool assessment. Isla leaned down, her hands braced on the table, and looked Callum directly in the eyes. I'm going to make this the worst year of your life, she promised softly. You want to reject me? Fine, but you're going to regret every single day you have to spend with me. I guarantee it. Something flashed in Callum's eyes, respect, maybe, or challenge, but his voice remained cold. I look forward to it. Isla grabbed her bag and walked out of the cafe with her head held high. She made it 3 blocks before she had to duck into an alley and let the tears come. She pressed her back against the brick wall and slid down to the ground, her arms wrapped around her knees, her body shaking with silent sobs. Her omega was keening inside her chest, a high, wounded sound that made her ribs ache. Her wolf didn't understand, couldn't understand why their mate had rejected them so cruelly. Not pretty enough, not polished enough, not feminine enough, not enough. Isla let herself cry for exactly 5 minutes. Then she pulled out her phone, wiped her eyes, and called her best friend. Maya, I need wine, and possibly a felony-level amount of chocolate. Can you come over tonight? Oh, honey, Maya said, her voice warm with concern. What happened? I met my fated mate, Isla said, her voice breaking on the last word. And he rejected me because I'm not pretty enough for his Instagram. There was a long, dangerous silence. Then Maya said, in a voice that promised violence, "I'm bringing tequila, and I'm calling the girls. We're going to get you through this, Isla, and then we're going to make that alpha regret ever being born." Isla laughed wetly. "I already promised to make his life miserable during the severance year." "That's my girl," Maya said fiercely. "See you in an hour. Don't you dare cry alone anymore." Isla hung up and stared at her phone for a long moment. Then she opened her photos and found the one blurry picture she'd managed to take at the gala before everything went wrong. Callum standing at the bar, his profile sharp in the chandelier light, unaware he was being photographed. Her mate. Her rejection. She deleted the photo with savage satisfaction and stood up, brushing off her jeans. If Callum Ashford wanted a severance year, she'd give him one. Just not the one he was expecting. Chapter 3. The apartment the severance court provided was obscenely nice. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, hardwood floors, a kitchen with marble countertops. 2 bedrooms on opposite sides of the living space, each with its own bathroom. Isla hated it immediately. She moved in on a Saturday, her Omega friends helping her carry boxes of law books and comfortable clothes. Maya eyed the pristine white furniture with suspicion. "This place looks like a furniture catalog," she muttered. "Nobody actually lives like this." "Callum Ashford does," Isla said bitterly. She was unpacking her collection of novelty mugs, each one a gift from a grateful client. They looked ridiculous on the expensive marble counter. Perfect. Callum arrived 3 hours later with a team of movers and enough luggage to stock a small fitness empire. Protein powder, supplements, resistance bands, a foam roller, everything carefully organized and labeled. He nodded curtly at Isla and retreated to his bedroom without a word. Fine. If he wanted to play it cold, she could be ice. That first week set the pattern. They avoided each other as much as possible. Callum left for the gym at 5 a.m., Isla made coffee at 7, deliberately using his expensive espresso machine wrong so it made terrible grinding noises. When Callum came home, Isla would blast her true crime podcasts at maximum volume, the host's cheerful discussion of serial killers echoing through the apartment. She, accidentally, donated all his kale and protein powder, replacing it with junk food. She wore his expensive cashmere hoodies as pajamas and returned them shrunk. She invited her loud, chaotic Omega friends over for wine nights, all of them proudly unconventional Omegas who didn't fit society's mold. But there was one thing Isla couldn't bring herself to do in the apartment, no matter how much her Omega instincts screamed at her to try. She couldn't nest. Every time she even thought about gathering soft things, about creating a safe space, her wolf would whimper and curl up in shame. What was the point? Her mate didn't want her. Building a nest in a place that would never be home, for a bond that was meant to die. It felt like admitting defeat. It felt like lying to herself. So instead, she slept in her bed, with just the standard sheets and one pillow, her Omega constantly restless and unsettled, and told herself she was fine. Their first therapy session with Dr. Amara Okonkwo was a disaster. Dr. Okonkwo was a beta in her 50s with kind eyes and absolutely no patience for nonsense. She took one look at them, Callum in his designer athleisure, Isla in her baggiest cardigan, and sighed. "So," she said, "who wants to tell me why you're both so determined to be miserable?" "He rejected me because I'm not Instagram pretty enough," Isla said flatly. "She's deliberately sabotaging my routine," Callum countered. "Good," Dr. Okonkwo said. Isla blinked. "You rejected your mate for superficial reasons, Mr. Ashford. A little sabotage seems proportional. Ms. Thorne, I approve of your pettiness. Continue." Callum looked scandalized. Isla grinned for the first time in days. Dr. Okonkwo leaned forward. "Here's how this works. You two have 12 months to either fix this bond or break it cleanly. I don't care which, but you're going to do the work. You're going to be honest. And you're going to stop pretending you don't feel this bond gnawing at both of you. She was right, of course. Isla could feel the bond constantly, a golden thread connecting her chest to Callum's, pulling tight whenever he was near. Her Omega wanted to curl up against him, to breathe in his scent, to feel safe and cherished. But her pride wouldn't let her. During their 4th therapy session, Dr. Okonkwo assigned them a vulnerability exercise. One true thing about themselves, shared every evening. Isla went first. They were sitting on opposite ends of the couch in the apartment, careful not to touch. She was wearing an oversized green cardigan and had ink stains on her fingers from annotating a case file. "I've never felt like a proper Omega," she said quietly. Her voice was shaking with suppressed emotion. "I'm too loud, too argumentative, too much in my head. I don't look right, don't dress right, don't act right. My whole life, people have told me I'm doing Omega wrong. And I thought, when the bond snapped, I thought maybe the universe was telling me I was enough exactly as I am." She looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears behind her glasses. "Then you looked at me like I was a mistake that needed correcting, like everything I've always feared about myself was true." Callum's expression cracked, just for a moment. Something that looked like genuine anguish flashed across his face before he controlled it. His hands were clenched into fists on his knees. "I'm not happy with my fame," he said, finally, his voice hoarse. "I feel like a product, not a person. Every part of my life is curated and controlled. My manager tells me what to wear, what to say, who to be seen with. I've forgotten who I actually am underneath the brand. Sometimes I look at my own Instagram and don't recognize the person in the photos." Isla studied him. That actually sounded genuine, vulnerable, not like the cold, image-obsessed alpha who'd rejected her. "Why don't you stop?" she asked. "If you hate it so much, why not just quit?" "I can't." Callum looked away. "I have people depending on me. Family who needs the money. Contracts I have to fulfill. It's not that simple." "It never is," Isla said softly. They sat in silence for a long moment, the vulnerability hanging between them like a fragile thing. Then Callum stood up abruptly. "Good night, Isla." "Good night, Callum." He retreated to his bedroom, and Isla sat alone in the dark, more confused than ever. That night, lying in her too-empty bed, Isla's Omega whimpered softly. She'd caught Callum's scent on one of the hoodies she'd stolen, the one she'd worn today during their vulnerability session. Without thinking, she pulled it closer, burying her face in the soft fabric. Pine and winter storms. Her wolf settled slightly, soothed by the scent of their mate, even as her human heart ached with confusion. Before she could stop herself, Isla grabbed another hoodie from her drawer, the black one she'd accidentally shrunk. Then her favorite cardigan, a soft blanket from the couch. Her hands moved on instinct, her Omega taking over, arranging the soft things around her in a small, pathetic approximation of a nest. It wasn't a real nest. It was barely anything at all. But her wolf quieted for the first time since the rejection, and Isla fell asleep surrounded by her mate's scent, even if he didn't want her. Isla found the romance novel on the coffee table. She'd been looking for her phone and knocked over a stack of Callum's mail, revealing a battered paperback with a shirtless man on the cover. She picked it up, surprised. It was one of her favorites, a paranormal romance about second-chance mates. Had she left this out? She couldn't remember. Looking for something? Isla jumped. Callum was standing in the kitchen doorway, a protein shake in his hand. His hair was damp from a shower, curling slightly at the ends. He looked tired. He'd been looking tired a lot lately, she'd noticed. Shadows under his eyes. A tightness around his mouth that seemed to be pain. "Is this yours?" she asked, holding up the book. Callum's expression flickered with something, Embarrassment? I saw it on your nightstand. Borrowed it. Hope that's okay. Isla's eyebrows shot up. You read romance novels? Is that surprising? He moved into the living room, settling into the armchair across from her. Keeping distance, as always. A little, Isla admitted. You don't really seem the type. What type do I seem? There was something sharp in his voice, a challenge. Isla considered him. The type who believes love is a distraction from building your brand? The type who thinks romance is frivolous? I think love is the only thing that's real, Callum said quietly. Everything else, the followers, the sponsors, the perfectly curated photos, it's all smoke and mirrors. But love? That's real. That matters. Isla's heart did a traitorous little flip. She shoved it down ruthlessly. Then why did you reject the mate bond? Callum's face closed off immediately. You know why. Because I'm not pretty enough for Instagram? She said bitterly. Isla, he started to say something, then stopped. His hands were clenched around his protein shake so tightly she thought the bottle might crack. It's complicated. It's really not, she shot back. You're either my mate or you're not. You either want me or you don't. I can't, Callum's voice broke. He set down the shake and pressed his hands over his face. When he spoke again, his voice was muffled. I can't talk about this right now. I'm sorry. He stood up and retreated to his bedroom, the door closing softly behind him. Isla sat there, holding the romance novel, her heart aching with confusion. Because that hadn't sounded like a man who didn't want her. That had sounded like a man in pain. She opened the book and found notes in the margins. Callum's handwriting, messy, quick notes about character motivation and romantic tension. On one page, next to a scene where the hero finally confessed his feelings, he'd written, "Wish I had this kind of courage." Isla closed the book carefully and set it on the coffee table. Something was wrong. Something more than a rejected bond. The vulnerability exercises had become their routine. Every evening, they shared one true thing about themselves. Slowly, carefully, they were building something. Not quite friendship, not quite forgiveness, but something fragile and real. Callum told her about his family. 3 younger siblings in Montana, a struggling pack in a dying town. He sent most of his money home, paid for his sister's college, kept his brother out of debt, supported his parents' medical expenses. They don't know about the rejection, he admitted one night. They were sitting on the couch, still on opposite ends, but closer than before. They think I'm living with my mate. They're happy for me. I couldn't tell them the truth. Isla felt her anger soften despite herself. You're a good brother. I'm trying. Callum's smile was sad, and there was something haunted in his eyes. Feels like I'm failing at everything else, but at least I can do that. Isla told him about her mother. An omega forcibly bonded to an abusive alpha under old pack laws before the Omega Protection Act passed. Her mother had died when Isla was 12, heart failure officially, but Isla knew it was really a broken heart. That's why you became a lawyer, Callum said. Not a question. Someone has to fight for omegas who can't fight for themselves, Isla said fiercely. Someone has to make sure what happened to my mother never happens again. Callum was watching her with something like awe in his eyes. You're remarkable, he said softly. Do you know that? You're absolutely remarkable. Isla's breath caught. Don't say things like that. Why not? It's true. Because, she gestured helplessly between them. Because you rejected me, Callum. Because you told me I wasn't good enough. Because this, she touched her chest where the mate bond pulled tight. This hurts enough without you saying sweet things you don't mean. I mean every word, Callum said intensely. He was leaning forward now, his elbows on his knees, his ice blue eyes locked on hers. Every single word, Isla. You're brilliant and fierce and so beautiful it hurts to look at you sometimes. Isla's heart was hammering. Then why? I can't explain, Callum said desperately. Not yet. But please believe me. The rejection had nothing to do with you not being enough. You've always been enough. You're everything. Isla wanted to believe him. Moon above, she wanted to believe him so badly. But she couldn't reconcile his words now with the cold cruelty of that rejection at the cafe. I don't understand you, she whispered. I know. Callum's voice was raw. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Isla. He stood up and went to his bedroom, leaving Isla alone with her confusion and the treacherous hope blooming in her chest. That night, for the first time since moving in, Isla's Omega took over completely. She gathered every soft thing she could find, all of Callum's hoodies she'd stolen, her own cardigans, the throw blankets from the couch, the decorative pillows from the living room. She built a proper nest in the corner of her bedroom, circular and deep, lined with things that smelled like both of them. Her wolf settled with a contented rumble as she curled up in the center, surrounded by softness and the mingled scents of coffee and books and pine and winter storms. It wasn't a mating nest. It was a healing nest. A nest that said, maybe, just maybe, she was starting to believe that his cruel words at the cafe had been lies. That something else was going on. That there might be hope after all. Isla was starting to notice things. The way Callum winced when the full moon rose, as if the pull caused him physical pain. The way he made excuses to avoid pack runs with the building's wolf community. The medical bills she'd glimpsed on his desk, not from a regular doctor, but from some specialist whose name she didn't recognize. Dr. Yoon. An oncologist? The tremor in his hands some mornings. The exhaustion that seemed bone deep. The way he moved sometimes, as if his body hurt in ways he was desperately trying to hide. Something was wrong. Something more than a rejected mate bond. And whatever it was, he was hiding it from everyone. Isla tried to ask him about it during one of their vulnerability sessions. Are you okay? She said carefully. You seem tired lately. More than usual. Callum's expression shuddered immediately. I'm fine, just working a lot. Callum, I said I'm fine, Isla. His voice was sharp, final. Then he seemed to catch himself, and his expression softened. I appreciate your concern, but I'm handling it. Handling what? But he clearly wasn't going to tell her. Isla's Omega was restless, worried. Her wolf could sense that their mate was hurting, but she didn't know how to help when he wouldn't let her close. She tried to push the worry away and focus on the petty warfare that had become their daily routine. But it was getting harder, especially when she'd wake in the middle of the night and hear him pacing in his room, or catch him staring at her with an expression of such longing and grief that it made her chest ache. What are you hiding? She wanted to scream. Why did you really reject me? But she stayed silent, and the mystery deepened. Her nest was growing. Every few days she'd add something new. A soft t-shirt that smelled like him. Another blanket. One of her law books, because her nest needed to smell like her, too. Like coffee and old paper and late-night work sessions. Her Omega was preparing for something, though Isla didn't know what. Building a safe space. Waiting. Chapter 4. It happened at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Isla woke to the sound of something crashing in Callum's room. She was out of bed and across the apartment before she'd fully registered moving, her Omega instincts screaming that their mate was in danger. She pounded on his door. Callum? Callum, are you okay? No answer. Another crash. A low, agonized groan that made her blood run cold. Isla didn't hesitate. She tried the door, unlocked, and shoved it open. Callum was on the floor beside his bed, convulsing. His eyes were flickering between blue and gold, his body shaking violently. The nightstand had been knocked over, the lamp shattered on the hardwood. Callum! Isla dropped to her knees beside him, her hands hovering over his body, not sure if she should touch him. "What's happening? What do I do?" He couldn't answer. His wolf was trying to surface and failing, the shift starting and stopping in violent jerks. She could see bones beginning to reshape and then snapping back. It looked agonizing. Isla grabbed her phone from her pajama pocket and dialed 911 with shaking hands. "I need an ambulance. My mate is having some kind of shifting episode. He's convulsing. I don't know what's wrong." The operator was asking questions, but Isla was focused on Callum. His phone was on the floor near his bed. She lunged for it, swiping through his contacts with one hand while the other pressed against Callum's chest, trying to ground him, trying to push comfort through the bond. Dr. Yoon. The name jumped out at her. Isla hit dial. A sleepy voice answered. "Mr. Ashford? It's 3 a.m. This is Isla Thorne, Callum's mate. He's having an episode. He's convulsing, his shift is failing. I've called 911, but I don't know what to do." "Stay calm," Dr. Yoon said immediately. "All business now. Is he conscious?" "Barely." "Put pressure on his chest, your hand over his heart. Use the mate bond. Push comfort through it. Your omega should know how." Isla pressed both hands over Callum's heart and closed her eyes, reaching for that golden thread that connected them. She pushed everything she had through it. Comfort, safety, protection. "Please be okay. Please don't leave me. Please." Callum's convulsions began to slow. His eyes fluttered open, still flickering gold, but more aware. "Isla," he breathed. His hand came up to cover hers, pressing it tighter against his chest. You shouldn't see this." "Shut up," Isla said fiercely. Tears were streaming down her face. "Just shut up and let me help you." The ambulance arrived 7 minutes later. Dr. Yoon met them at the hospital, and while Callum was sedated and stabilized, she pulled Isla aside into a small consultation room. Isla's hands were still shaking. Her omega was frantic with worry, keening inside her chest. "Ms. Thorne," Dr. Yoon said gently, "I need to tell you something about Callum's condition, and I need you to understand that he didn't want you to know because he was trying to protect you." Isla's blood ran cold. "What condition?" Dr. Yoon took a deep breath. 6 months ago, Callum was diagnosed with lunar wasting disease. It's a rare genetic condition where the wolf consciousness slowly dies from within. It's terminal. There's no cure. The world tilted sideways. Isla gripped the edge of the table to keep from falling. "He's dying," she whispered. "Yes," Dr. Yoon said quietly. "His wolf has maybe 6 more months, possibly less. When the wolf dies, most people don't survive long after. The psychological trauma is too severe." Everything clicked into place with devastating clarity. The exhaustion, the wincing at full moons, the medical bills, the way he'd looked at her at the gala, not with disinterest, but with longing and grief. The cruel rejection that had never quite made sense. "The rejection," Isla breathed. "He rejected me because he's dying. Because he didn't want to bond with me and then leave me with a broken bond. A completed bond that breaks due to death is catastrophic for omegas," Dr. Yoon confirmed. "Callum researched extensively. He was trying to save you." Isla let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. That idiot. That noble, self-sacrificing idiot. She pressed her hands over her face. "He made me believe I wasn't good enough. He made me think I was the problem." "He needed you to hate him," Dr. Yoon said. "It was the only way he knew to protect you." Isla stood up, her legs unsteady. "I need to see him." "He's sedated, but you can sit with him." Isla walked to Callum's hospital room on autopilot. He was lying in the bed, his face pale against the white sheets, monitors beeping softly around him. He looked young and vulnerable in a way his carefully curated public persona never did. Isla sat down in the chair beside his bed and took his hand. Her omega was keening inside her chest, devastated and terrified. "You stupid alpha," she whispered. "You noble, infuriating, stupid alpha, making decisions for me, trying to protect me by breaking my heart." She brought his hand to her lips and kissed his knuckles gently. "I'm not leaving," she said firmly. "Whatever time we have left, I'm not leaving. So you'd better wake up and fight me about it, because I know you will." Callum's hand twitched in hers, and she hoped he could hear her. Isla settled into the chair, still holding his hand, and waited for him to wake up. They were going to have words. Chapter 5. Callum woke to the sound of Isla's voice, sharp and furious. "Let me believe I wasn't enough. You made me feel like I was the problem, too bookish, too unfeminine, too wrong to be loved. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" He opened his eyes slowly. Hospital room, monitors beeping. Isla sitting in a chair beside his bed, her eyes red-rimmed and blazing with anger. Her hair was a mess. She was wearing pajamas, an oversized t-shirt and sleep shorts, and one of his hoodies over it. She looked beautiful. She looked furious. She looked like she knew. "You know," Callum said hoarsely. His throat was raw. "Dr. Yoon told me." Isla's voice was shaking. "Lunar wasting disease. Terminal. 6 months to live. Were you ever going to tell me?" "No," Callum admitted. There was no point in lying now. "I was going to complete the severance year, let the bond fade, and then die quietly without you ever knowing why." "You idiot!" Isla stood up, pacing the small hospital room like a caged wolf. "You noble, self-sacrificing idiot! You don't get to make that decision for me. You don't get to decide what I can survive. You don't understand what a bond death does to an omega." Callum tried to sit up, but his body was weak and shaky. Isla was at his side immediately, helping him adjust the bed. "Don't," she said sharply. "Don't you dare try to sit up and lecture me about omega psychology. I'm a lawyer, Callum. I've read the studies. I know the statistics. And you know what else I know? That you don't get to control me with your protection." "I'm trying to save your life," Callum's voice broke. "If we bond, if we complete the bond, and then my wolf dies, the bond break will destroy you. 87% of omegas go feral or catatonic. Most never recover. I can't, I won't do that to you. That's my choice to make." Isla was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "Not yours. You're just like every other alpha who thinks they know what's best for omegas without asking us. You took away my agency. You made me feel worthless. You broke my heart to save it, and you didn't even give me a choice." Callum closed his eyes, tears leaking out. She was right. Moon above, she was right. He'd been so focused on protecting her that he'd hurt her in the worst way possible. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Isla, I'm so sorry. Every word I said at that cafe, all of it was lies. You're beautiful exactly as you are. You're brilliant and fierce and perfect. The moment I saw you at that gala, arguing about omega accessibility, I thought you were the most magnificent thing I'd ever seen. When the bond snapped, my dying wolf surged to life for the first time in months. You gave me hope. You gave me life. And I threw it away because I was terrified of hurting you." "You hurt me anyway," Isla said, her voice breaking. "You hurt me so much, Callum." "I know." Callum opened his eyes and looked at her, really looked at her. Her oversized t-shirt, her messy hair, her glasses sliding down her nose, her beautiful, furious, tear-stained face. "I know, and I'm sorrier than I can ever express. But Isla, I'm still dying. Even if you forgive me, even if we tried to make this work, I'm still dying. My wolf is fading. Soon I won't be able to shift at all. And when my wolf is gone— Your wolf is stronger when I'm near, Isla interrupted. She sat down on the edge of his hospital bed, her eyes intent. I've been watching you for 5 months, Callum. The bond is keeping you alive. When we're in the same room, your wolf is more present. When we talk, when we do the vulnerability exercises, you're stronger. Don't you see? The bond isn't just helping you temporarily, it's fighting the disease. Callum wanted to believe her. Moon above, he wanted to believe her so badly. But he'd read the research. He'd talked to Dr. Yoon. Lunar wasting was terminal. There was no cure. It's not enough, he said quietly. It's slowing the progression, maybe, but it's not stopping it. All completing the bond would do is tie you to me and guarantee you suffer when I die, psychologically if not physically. I've read the statistics, Isla. I can't do that to you. I won't. That's my choice, Isla said fiercely. She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. My risk, my decision. Stop trying to protect me from living my own life. They stared at each other, at an impasse. Callum's wolf was purring inside his chest, stronger than it had been in weeks, desperate to accept what she was offering. But his human mind knew better, knew that loving her would be the most selfish thing he could do. The door opened. Dr. Yoon stepped in, a tablet in her hands and an odd expression on her face. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, but Isla, there's something I need to ask you. Has anyone in your family ever been tested for lunar affinity? Isla looked confused. Lunar what? Dr. Yoon set down her tablet and pulled up a chair. Lunar affinity is an extremely rare genetic trait, found in less than 0.01% of omegas. It's so rare that most modern wolves consider it a myth. Omegas with lunar affinity were once called moon-blessed or wolf weavers. They possess an innate healing connection to wolf consciousness itself. Callum's heart began to race. What are you saying? I'm saying that Callum's wolf has been significantly stronger since he started living with Isla. Much more than we'd typically see from just the mate bond. The improvement is statistically anomalous. Dr. Yoon looked at Isla. I'd like to run some genetic tests, if you're willing. Isla didn't hesitate. Yes, do it, whatever it takes. Dr. Yoon called them both into her office. Callum had been discharged from the hospital and was back at the apartment, but things between him and Isla had shifted. She knew the truth now. The walls between them had crumbled, leaving only raw honesty and desperate hope. Dr. Yoon gestured for them to sit. Her expression was carefully neutral. The genetic tests came back, she said. Isla, you carry the lunar affinity gene. It's inherited from your maternal grandmother's line. Your grandmother was from an isolated mountain pack that kept old bloodlines pure. Your mother was taken from that pack as a child during territorial wars, so she likely never knew. Isla's hand found Callum's and gripped it tightly. What does that mean? Can I help him? Potentially, yes. Dr. Yoon pulled up a holographic display showing complex genetic sequences. Your Omega Wolf doesn't just bond to Callum. It has the potential to actively weave itself into his wolf's consciousness. Your wolf can feed his wolf energy, repair the genetic damage causing the lunar wasting. It's not instantaneous, but over the course of a completed bond, your lunar affinity could literally rebuild his dying wolf from the inside out. Callum felt like he'd been punched. You're saying she can cure me? I'm saying she has the genetic capability to heal you, yes. Dr. Yoon held up a hand. But there's a critical caveat. The healing only works if the bond is genuine, complete, and reciprocal. The Omega must choose the bond freely, with full knowledge and consent. If there's any coercion, any deception about the Omega's role, or if the bond is completed purely for medical reasons rather than love, the lunar affinity won't activate. Dr. Yoon looked between them seriously. It requires true, freely given love from both parties. Love that's untainted by obligation or medical necessity. The irony hit Callum like a freight train. He'd rejected Isla to save her from his death. But his rejection had nearly guaranteed his death. Only by accepting her love, real, authentic, chosen love, could he survive. How do we know? Isla asked quietly. How do we know if what we feel is real, or just a response to the medical crisis? You continue therapy, Dr. Yoon said. You continue the severance year as planned. You figure out if what you feel is genuine, separate from the bond's pull, separate from guilt and obligation, separate from the high-stakes drama. You need to choose each other as people, not as solutions to each other's problems. Isla turned to Callum. Her eyes were bright with tears and determination. Then that's what we do. We finish the severance year. We figure out if this is real. Callum brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. Are you sure? Isla, you don't have to. I'm sure, she said firmly. I'm choosing to try. The rest, we'll figure out together. Callum nodded, his throat too tight to speak. They had 6 more months to fall in love for real. And for the first time since his diagnosis, Callum let himself hope. Chapter 6. Falling in love with Callum was nothing like Isla had imagined. It wasn't the dramatic, instant connection of the mate bond snapping into place. It wasn't the desperate longing of those first months when she'd thought he didn't want her. It was quieter, gentler, real. Callum stepped back from his influencer empire, delegating most of his brand work to focus on what actually mattered. The carefully curated Instagram posts became less frequent, replaced by genuine content. Unfiltered morning selfies, videos of him failing at cooking, honest posts about struggling with illness and identity. His followers noticed. Some left, but more stayed, and the comments changed from superficial praise to real connection. Thank you for being real, one comment read. I needed to see that it's okay to be imperfect. Callum showed Isla who he really was beneath the brand. The man who loved old movies and quoted them at inappropriate times. The man who was terrified of disappointing his family but sent them money anyway. The man who secretly wrote terrible poetry in a worn notebook he kept hidden in his nightstand. One evening, he showed her that notebook. His hands were shaking as he passed it to her. Isla read the poems, raw, honest, full of longing and fear and hope. One was about her, about seeing her at the gala and knowing he had to let her go. These are beautiful, she whispered. They're terrible, Callum said, but he was smiling. They're yours, Isla corrected. That makes them beautiful. Isla, meanwhile, was doing her own soul-searching. She talked through everything in therapy, with Dr. Okonkwo, with her friends, in her own journaling. Was she falling in love with Callum, or with the idea of saving him? Was her omega instinct to heal and nurture clouding her judgment? But the more time she spent with him, the more certain she became. This wasn't about healing. This was about the way he listened when she talked about her cases, really listened, asking thoughtful questions. This was about the way he made her coffee exactly right without being asked. This was about the way he never tried to change her, never suggested she dress differently or style her hair, or be anything other than exactly who she was. She started dressing differently, not for him, but for herself. She still wore her oversized cardigans and comfortable clothes, but occasionally she'd try something more fitted. She'd style her hair, experiment with minimal makeup. Not because anyone asked her to, but because she was learning that she could be bookish and beautiful, comfortable and confident, exactly herself and absolutely enough. Her nest changed too. It grew larger, more elaborate, more intentional. She brought in fairy lights that she strung around the edges, casting everything in warm, golden light. She added his favorite gray hoodie, the one he'd been looking for, right in the center where she could curl around it. She brought in books, her laptop, case files. This wasn't just a place to sleep anymore. This was becoming her sanctuary. And increasingly, it smelled like both of them. like home, like the future she was letting herself hope for. One evening, Callum noticed her carrying an armload of blankets toward her room. "Are you—" He stopped himself, looking uncertain. "Sorry, I don't want to intrude, but are you nesting?" Isla froze, suddenly self-conscious. Nesting was intimate, personal. Admitting she was nesting for him, for them, felt vulnerable in a way that terrified her. "Maybe," she said carefully. "Is that okay?" "Okay?" Callum's voice was rough with emotion. "Isla, it's more than okay. It means—" He swallowed hard. "It means your Omega feels safe here, with me. I'm honored, truly." Isla felt her cheeks flush. "Don't make it weird." "I'm not," he said softly. "I just want you to know that it matters. You matter." After that, Callum started leaving things for her nest without comment. A soft throw blanket appeared on her bed, a pillow that smelled like him. He never mentioned it, never drew attention to it, but Isla knew. Her Omega preened every time she found something new, and her nest became a physical representation of what was growing between them. Careful, deliberate, and real. Callum had another episode. Not as severe as the hospital incident, but painful and frightening nonetheless. His wolf flickered in and out, and Isla stayed with him through it, her hands pressed over his heart, pushing comfort and love through the bond. When it was over, when his breathing had steadied and his eyes had returned to their normal blue, Isla pulled him close. "I love you," she said. The words came out in a rush, unstoppable. "Not because you're my fated mate, not because my genes say I can heal you, not because we're legally required to live together. I love you because you send money to your siblings even when it means you can't save anything for yourself. I love you because you laugh at my terrible true crime podcast impressions. I love you because you're kind to waitstaff and you cry at rescue dog videos, and you're trying so hard to be authentic in a world that rewards fakeness. I love you, Callum Ashford. The real you. Not the brand, not the image. You." Callum was crying openly. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "I love you too," he said hoarsely. "I love your brilliant mind and your fierce heart. And yes, your oversized cardigans and messy buns and the way you argue about everything. I love that you're unapologetically yourself. I loved you the moment I saw you at that gala, and I've loved you every day since, even when I was trying desperately not to. Even when I thought loving you meant letting you go." "No more letting go," Isla said fiercely. "We fight for this, together." "Together," Callum agreed. They held each other in the quiet apartment, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows, and let themselves believe in the possibility of forever. Later that night, after Callum had fallen asleep on the couch during a movie, Isla did something she'd never done before. She woke him gently and, with her heart in her throat, asked, Would you like to see my nest?" Callum's eyes went wide. An Omega inviting someone into their nest was sacred, intimate, a sign of complete trust. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. "I'm sure," Isla said. "I want you to see it. I want you to know—" She took a breath. "I want you to know that I'm choosing this. Choosing you, not because I have to, because I want to." Callum followed her to her bedroom. When she opened the door, he stopped in the doorway, his breath catching. Her nest was beautiful, circular and deep, lined with soft fabrics in creams and grays and forest greens. His hoodies mixed with her cardigans, blankets and pillows arranged in careful layers. The fairy lights casting everything in warm, gentle light. It smelled like both of them, coffee and books and pine and winter storms. "Isla," he breathed, "it's perfect." "You can't come in," she said quickly. "Not yet. Not until we complete the bond. But I wanted you to see. I wanted you to know that I'm building this for us, for our future." Callum looked at her with such love and wonder that her heart ached. "Thank you," he said. "For trusting me with this. For trusting me with you." Isla smiled, feeling lighter than she had in months. Her nest was ready. Her heart was ready. Now they just had to finish falling in love. Chapter 7. They decided together to complete the bond. They'd done the work. They'd built genuine intimacy through months of vulnerability and honesty. They'd fallen in love, real love, chosen love, love that had nothing to do with medical necessity or bond pull, and everything to do with choosing each other every single day. Dr. Okonkwo approved their decision. "I've been doing this for 30 years, she said, her eyes suspiciously bright. "I've never seen two people work harder to earn their bond. You're ready." The marking ceremony was private. Just them and Dr. Okonkwo as witness, as required by law. Isla wore a simple dress, soft blue, comfortable, her own choice. Callum wore a button-down shirt and actual jeans instead of his usual athleisure. They stood facing each other in Dr. Okonkwo's office, hands clasped, hearts racing. "Isla Thorne," Callum said softly, "do you choose this bond? Do you choose me? Not to heal me, not out of obligation, but because you want to spend your life with me." "I choose you," Isla said, her voice steady despite her tears. "I choose this bond. I choose us." "Callum Ashford," Isla continued, "do you choose this bond? Do you choose me, all of me, exactly as I am?" "I choose you," Callum said, "always. You're everything I never knew I needed." They marked each other, Callum's mark on the curve of Isla's neck, Isla's mark on Callum's. Modern Omega rights laws allowed reciprocal marking, and Isla had never been more grateful for the laws she'd fought to protect. When their marks sealed, something extraordinary happened. Isla felt her Omega wolf surge forward with a power she'd never experienced. There was a golden warmth that flowed from her chest into his, and she could feel his wolf, broken, fragmented, dying. And her wolf reached out with invisible threads of light and began to weave, to mend, to heal. Callum gasped. His eyes went wide with shock and wonder. His wolf, which had been a faint whisper for months, suddenly roared to life with a strength that was staggering. "I can feel it," he breathed. "Isla, I can feel your wolf. It's moon above, it's incredible." The lunar affinity had activated. They completed the bond that night in the privacy of their apartment. Isla led Callum to her nest, their nest now, and invited him inside for the first time. He stepped into the carefully constructed sanctuary with reverence, his eyes taking in every detail, every soft surface that smelled like them both. They settled into the nest together, surrounded by warmth and softness and the mingled scents of coffee and books and pine and winter storms. With whispered promises and tears of joy and relief, they made the bond permanent. And with each moment of intimacy, each declaration of love, each touch and kiss and whispered word, the healing deepened. Isla could feel it through the bond, her lunar affinity weaving through Callum's wolf consciousness like threads of golden light, mending what was broken, strengthening what was weak. His wolf responded with desperate gratitude, reaching back toward hers, accepting the healing she offered. In the nest, surrounded by everything soft and safe, they became truly one. 2 weeks later, the legal papers arrived. Isla read them with growing fury. A coalition of traditional pacts had filed a motion to nullify their bond, claiming that her lunar affinity created an unfair supernatural influence that invalidated Callum's consent. "They're saying I coerced you," she said incredulously. "They're saying your survival instinct makes your consent invalid." Callum's face was dark with anger. "That's ridiculous. We can fight this." "We will fight this," Isla said grimly. "This isn't just about us anymore. If they win, it sets a precedent that Omegas with rare abilities can't legally bond. They're trying to take away Omega agency under the guise of protecting Alphas." She knew this playbook. She'd fought it her entire career. Isla represented them both in court. the case became famous, live-streamed to the entire wolf community. The courtroom was packed, media everywhere. Isla stood at the defendant's table in her best suit, still professional, still her, but confident and fierce. Callum sat beside her, his hand finding hers under the table and squeezing tight. The opposing counsel made their case. Isla listened, taking notes, her mind already 3 steps ahead. When it was time for her closing argument, she stood and walked to the center of the courtroom. "Your Honors," she began. "The opposing counsel argues that my lunar affinity negates my mate's free will. But let's examine the actual facts of this case." She walked them through everything: Callum's rejection, knowing he was dying but not knowing about her healing abilities. The 6 months he maintained that rejection despite feeling stronger near her. The 4 additional months they spent in therapy, questioning their motives, ensuring their love was genuine. The opposing counsel claims his survival instinct makes his consent invalid, Isla continued. But if we accept that logic, then we must invalidate every bond where one partner materially benefits from the other. Every bond where an omega gains an alpha's protection. Every bond where a beta gains an alpha's status. Every bond where anyone receives anything: security, children, companionship, purpose from their mate. She paused, letting that sink in. Love is always about what we give each other and what we receive. My gift happens to be healing. His gift is unwavering devotion and courage. Neither negates the other. Her voice grew stronger, more passionate. But here's what this case is really about: fear. Fear of powerful omegas who don't fit the submissive mold. Fear of rare gifts that challenge traditional pack hierarchies. Fear of omegas who have agency and power in their relationships. She looked directly at the panel of judges. The real question before this court is, will you allow ancient prejudice to dictate who deserves love? Will you create a legal precedent that says some wolves, specifically omegas with rare abilities, are too powerful to have the basic right to choose their own mates? Isla glanced back at Callum, who was watching her with such love and pride that her heart ached. Callum Ashford is here today, healthy and whole, not because I coerced him. He's here because we chose each other, freely, deliberately, with eyes wide open to all the complications and consequences. We did everything your laws required. We completed the severance year process with integrity and honesty. We earned this bond. Her voice dropped, fierce and final. Don't punish us for having the courage to fight for each other. Don't punish future omegas for having gifts. And for Moon's sake, don't invalidate a man's agency by claiming he's too weak to resist a little omega in an oversized cardigan. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Some people laughed. Callum was openly crying. The judges deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, Judge Moreno, an elderly alpha with 60 years on the bench, delivered the verdict with tears in his eyes. In my 6 decades of presiding over mate bond cases, I have never seen 2 people fight harder to be together while simultaneously respecting each other's autonomy. The evidence clearly shows that Mr. Ashford rejected Ms. Thorne initially, maintained that rejection for months despite medical benefit, and only accepted the bond after extensive therapy and genuine emotional connection. Judge Moreno's voice grew stronger. This court finds that both parties entered the mate bond with full, informed consent, free will, and authentic emotional connection. The bond is valid, legal, and permanent. Furthermore, this court condemns the underlying prejudice in this challenge and warns against future attempts to deny omegas with rare abilities their fundamental right to mate. He slammed his gavel. Case dismissed. Bond approved. The courtroom exploded in applause. Isla sagged with relief, and Callum was there immediately, sweeping her into his arms, spinning her around while she laughed and cried simultaneously. They'd won. 2 weeks later, they had their final therapy session with Dr. Okonkwo. Callum's latest medical tests showed his wolf completely healthy. The lunar wasting was gone, not in remission, but actually cured. The genetic repairs appeared permanent. Dr. Yoon had asked permission to publish their case study to give hope to other lunar wasting patients. They'd agreed. The apartment was officially theirs now. They'd signed a lease to stay. It was covered in both their belongings, his fitness equipment alongside her mountains of books, his meal prep containers next to her stress baking supplies, framed photos of them covering the walls. Dr. Okonkwo looked at them with genuine affection. You know, when you two walked in here 12 months ago, I gave you a 15% chance of making it work. Now look at you. They were sitting close together on the couch, Isla curled into Callum's side, his arm around her shoulders. She was wearing one of her oversized cardigans over a fitted shirt. Her hair was in its signature messy bun. She'd never looked more beautiful or more completely herself. Dr. Okonkwo asked the standard question. Do you choose this bond? Callum went first, taking both of Isla's hands in his. A year ago, I rejected the best thing that ever happened to me because I was terrified of hurting her. I thought dying alone was noble. I was an idiot. Isla didn't just save my life, she taught me how to actually live it. She taught me that being vulnerable isn't weakness, that being authentic is more valuable than being perfect, and that love isn't about protecting people from hard things. It's about facing hard things together. Yes, I choose this bond. I choose her. Every day, for the rest of my life. Isla was crying happy tears. He tried to nobly sacrifice himself, like a stubborn alpha idiot. I had to lawyer my way into his heart and convince him I was capable of making my own choices. Best case I ever argued. Best verdict I ever won. She squeezed his hands. You made me believe I wasn't enough. That I was too bookish, too unfeminine, too wrong to be loved. Then you spent months showing me that I was always enough, exactly as I am. You see me, really see me, and love what you see. Yes, I choose this bond. I choose you. Always. Dr. Okonkwo signed the official document with a flourish. Then by the power vested in me by the Severance Court, I hereby declare your mate bond legally recognized as permanent, complete, and valid. You've successfully completed the Severance Year program, not by severing your bond, but by building something too strong to ever break. She grinned. I expect a wedding invitation. You'll get one, Isla promised. They left the office hand in hand, ready for the rest of their lives. Epilogue. Isla arrived at the charity gala on Callum's arm, and everything was different. It was the same annual gala, held at the same Riverside Grand Ballroom. Exactly 2 years since the night the mate bond had snapped, but Isla was different now. Callum was different. They were different. Callum still had a significant social media following, but his content had completely transformed. Unfiltered posts about authenticity and mental health, photos of him and Isla cooking together where everything went hilariously wrong, videos of their nonprofit work. His followers had actually grown, but now they were there for real connection, not curated perfection. Isla had also transformed, though more subtly. She still wore her comfortable clothes and oversized cardigans, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew she was loved exactly as she was. Tonight she wore a soft dress paired with comfortable flats and an elegant cardigan. Her hair was in a relaxed updo. She looked like herself, just more radiant, more at peace. They were keynote speakers for the Ashford Thorne Foundation, the nonprofit they'd founded together. It funded research for rare genetic conditions and advocated for omega rights. Their speech was powerful. They shared their story, the rejection, the severance year, the legal battle. By the end, there wasn't a dry eye in the ballroom. Afterward, Callum pulled Isla away from the crowds to a quiet corner. The exact spot where they'd first locked eyes 2 years ago. I was so scared that night, he admitted. Felt the bond snap and knew immediately that I'd have to walk away from the best thing that ever happened to me. I stood right here and watched you argue with those event coordinators, and you were so fierce and brilliant, and I thought, she's perfect. She's everything, and I have to let her go. Isla reached up to cup his face. Good thing I don't let alphas make decisions for me, even stupidly noble dying ones who insult my fashion choices. In my defense, I love your fashion choices. I was lying to protect you. I know that now. Isla smiled. Though you did make me cry into my favorite cardigan for like 3 days. I'm sorry, he said seriously. Even though they'd moved past it, even though she'd forgiven him, he still needed to say it sometimes. I'm sorry I hurt you. I know, she said softly. And I forgive you. Every time you need to hear it, I forgive you. They stood there, swaying slightly. Around them, the gala continued, their friends and family, Callum's siblings, Isla's chaotic Omega friend group, Dr. Okonkwo and Dr. Yoon. Dr. Yoon confirmed again last week, Callum said quietly. The healing is permanent. My wolf is fully restored. I know, Isla said. You're stuck with me forever. No takebacks. Best consequence of a rejection clause I can imagine, he murmured. Then he paused. Actually, speaking of consequences, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Isla's eyes went wide. We're already bonded, he said quickly, already legally mated, but I wanted to ask you properly, the human way, with a ring and a choice and romance. He opened the box to reveal a beautiful moonstone ring surrounded by small emeralds. Isla Thorne, will you marry me? Not because pack law says we're mates, not because your lunar affinity healed me, not because we're already bonded, but because I love you, because I choose you. Because I want to stand up in front of everyone we care about and promise to love you, argue with you, support your chaotic cookie baking habit, and steal your cardigans for the rest of our lives. Isla was crying and laughing simultaneously. You already steal my cardigans. Is that a yes? Yes, you ridiculous alpha. Yes, I'll marry you. He slid the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. They kissed there in their special corner, and his wolf howled with pure joy. Her Omega responded with a harmonic note of contentment and love, and between them, the lunar affinity glowed warm and golden, a permanent connection, a healing bond, a love that literally saved them both. When they finally pulled apart, Isla looked at the ring and then up at him with mischief in her eyes. You know my friends are going to lose their minds. We'll have to plan a wedding now. As long as you promise to wear whatever you want and not let anyone pressure you into some traditional Omega bride nonsense, he said firmly. I was thinking a big, comfortable cardigan over my wedding dress, she teased. Perfect. You'll be the most beautiful bride in sweater history. They headed back to the gala, hand in hand, ready to share their news. Behind them, the spot where they first met seemed to shimmer slightly in the light, as if the universe itself was satisfied with how their story had unfolded. Two souls that almost missed each other, a rejection that became a salvation, a severance year that ended not in separation, but in forever. A love that was tested, fought for, legally defended, and ultimately proved unbreakable. Isla looked up at Callum, her mate, her love, her choice, and smiled. Ready for forever? She asked. With you? Callum brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. Always.